On the menu today,
welcome.
And the name Einstein just doesn't spook you. Oh, hello chip dippers. Welcome back to Retro Recipes. Or if your name is John Titor instead of Einstein, I should say welcome back in time. Because yeah, with Halloween in the air and the Halloween computer right there.
Oh, get me out of here. Push the escape key.
Thank you. We're going to investigate the fascinating story of John Titor, who claimed to be an American military time traveler sent back from the year 2036, specially to obtain a 1975 IBM 5100 computer for a very specific and rather spooky purpose. Thank you. That's not spooky at all. This is kind of serious, along the way. Titor warned us of an impending civil and nuclear war. And strangely, I only found out about this story after someone mentioned it when they read my own time travel novel, The Chrononaut. Now, as you may know, my book asks, what if so-called aliens are actually highly evolved humans from Earth's distant future, and so-called flying saucers are their time machines? So I was pretty stunned to see parallels between Titor's story and my own, including the claim that in his time, they still don't know what UFOs are, but they think that they might be highly evolved humans from Earth's distant... Well, yeah, you get the idea. She can see my reflection in the Halloween computer. Or is she looking back in time? Well, either way, is John Titor's story about time travel just a story like mine? Or could there be something more real to it? After all, as Stephen Hawking said, if time travel was invented in the future, wouldn't we know about it by now? Wouldn't time travelers have come back to tell us? Well, let's just imagine for a minute that they actually have, and we didn't believe them. So just for fun, let's take Titor's story and its retro computing heart seriously, because there is one secret detail about the IBM 5100 that I don't think he could have known in the year 2000, unless he was a time traveler. So first, we really need to understand what the IBM 5100 was, or is, what will be. It's confusing. It was released in 1975 at a cost of just $19,500 and one of the first commercially available portable computers.
The cost of the 5100 is reasonable.
Now, the price tag may make more sense when you realize it supported up to the same amount of memory as the Commodore 64, which wouldn't be released until 7 years later. Yep, this thing really was ahead of its time. You hear that? And yes, like the SX64 that would follow, this sucker's portable, making it ideal for a traveler or a time traveler. It also featured IBM's own 1.9 MHz processor, a 5-inch monochrome display, and internal 200 kilobyte tape drive. Yep, no floppy disks here. And it ran BASIC or APL. Now, APL is a 1960s array-oriented programming language that used graphic symbols to represent its functions. And as we all know, APL stands for a programming language. No, seriously, it actually does. Just as PCB stands for Portable Computer Bank Vault. Yep, if you need great quality PCBs that don't cost $19,500, but actually just $5, then we recommend PCB Way! Excuse me, Way! Yeah, sorry about that. But from PCB back to APL. APL was actually at the heart of Titor's special mission when he logged into a computer bulletin board back in the year 2000 and posted this. Now I know what you're thinking, pull the other one mate, it's got bells on it. But actually, yeah, he did indeed post photos, and very convincing ones at that. Photos that to this day have never been disproven. Now, in his case, the time machine was mounted in a 1967 Chevy rather than a DeLorean. Now, yes, this might ring alarm bells as being just a copycat of a well-known other certain story. But on the other hand, life does imitate art. Take the Space Force Star Trek logo for a tiny example. So let's suspend disbelief just for a moment more, because Marty, things are about to get heavy. Indeed, the suspicions faded for Titor when people had questions and he had answers. Now, yes, in some cases the answers were kind of vague, but in others he gave incredibly detailed predictions of the future. And it seems several of them have come true over the 20 years that followed. First, he stated the time machine operated through the use of 2 mini black holes, producing a gravity field. But Stephen Hawking believed mini black holes were impossible. In response to skeptics, Titor had this to say. But 4 years later, Hawking sensationally retracted his theories on black holes. Next, Titor posed a seemingly strange question back in 2000. This didn't make much sense until perhaps the Columbia Space Shuttle disaster 4 years later, caused by a piece of the shuttle's heat insulation breaking off. And he also described Olympics being cancelled, albeit in 2004, and election voting being hacked. But of course, other predictions haven't materialized. There was no American Civil War. Well, no, actually, I mean, he said it would happen in 2004. Anyway, there's also been no nuclear war in 2015 with Russia, but he had an oddly believable reason for why none of that might come true. He invoked the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, simply meaning that he came from a different timeline to our own, and those events happened in his universe, not ours. But perhaps what led to so many people believing him at the time was his insistence that well, now I don't know what to believe. And you know, back in 2000, with the more limited beginnings of the internet and discussion forums on the web, I can kind of forgive people for becoming so absorbed in the story, with Titor achieving almost cult-like status.
Wow, it really is the right model. That's crazy.
This is fantastic. Lift with your knees.
私は2036年の未来から来た。その時代はセルによって支配されたディストピアで。
But okay, why had he traveled back to 1975 to Rochester, Minnesota specifically, where the machine was created, to collect that IBM 5100? Well, apparently his grandfather was one of the creators of the machine and had actually helped him obtain it back in time. And he'd stopped in 2000 to pay a visit for 4 months, while he also posted on these forums, to see his parents. He went on to claim that back home, his military unit was responsible for retrieving key items from the past that could help them recover from that war, and that IBM machine was a key unit. And crucially, he stated that an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, had been responsible for destroying all of their computers, and therefore any remaining IBM 5100s. He even offered to take people back with him to the year 2036, along with that IBM. But the best part of the story is coming right up. See you in the future. Now for the really juicy part. You see, he specifically claimed that the IBM was needed to debug machines used in 2036. Not really so far-fetched. After all, in 2002, NASA did the same thing, buying old medical tech on Flickr to use as donor machines due to the Intel 8086 chips they contained, which were needed to test rocket boosters. But here's that other detail I alluded to that nobody really should have known about in the year 2000. See, at that time, Titor claimed this. Now that isn't the part he couldn't have known. The 2038 problem is basically the new Y2K bug. You see, at 3:14 UTC on the 19th of January 2038, which is 2.15 billion seconds after 1970, computers still using 32-bit systems won't be able to cope because they can't count higher than 2.15 billion. So they'll essentially suddenly think it's 1970, which could be a real problem for time-dependent systems, right? Right. And Titor crucially claimed that the 5100 had a special ability to read older languages. And guess what? He was right. An engineer called Bob Dubk, who had worked on the 5100 back in the 70s, came forward and for the first time publicly confirmed this hidden feature. He went on to explain how the 5100 could actually emulate programs in older IBM mainframe languages via an IBM System 360 assembly emulator hidden inside it. That emulator gave programmers access to the functions of the huge 1960s mainframe computers, but in a portable form factor, perhaps very handy for a time traveler. And Titor inferred that it would allow you to drop into what he called legacy code and essentially scoop out information. Now, he never stated exactly why, but I could surmise from that because the 2038 problem revolves around the year 1970, that there's something in that 1975 code, because it can access older systems, 1970 for example, that they might have been able to use to solve the 2038 problem. Now, apparently back in 1975, IBM kept the lid on the feature and told engineers not to talk about it. I reached out to IBM's media relations department, and they too declined to comment for this very video. So how did Titor know stuff in 2000 that IBM refused to talk about in 1975 or today? Well, I can think of two explanations. First, he really was sent back by a military time travel unit because all of their 5100s were destroyed by that EMP weapon. Or he or someone close to him worked for IBM, knew about that legacy code that was hidden away by them, and Titor, or whatever his name is, used it to pull off one of the ultimate and first internet hoaxes. Hey babe, what are you doing?
Trimming my bush.
What are you actually doing?
Cutting herbs.
Oh, that's nice. Do you know I actually invented a futuristic herb collector?
You did?
Yeah, it's a time machine. Also, these are herbs, not herbs, because they've got a bloody H in them.
All right, Mr. Izzard.
And as for Titor's futuristic time, aside from a couple of twists we'll discover in a second, there's not much more I can tell you of that story, as this was his final message in 2001. The story kind of faded away, until that is, 2009. There, a report by John Houston of the Hoax Hunter website accused Larry Haber, a Florida entertainment lawyer, as being the CEO of the John Titor Foundation that had been set up to sell John Titor merchandise. Suspicious. Lynch alleged that Larry and his brother Maury Haber were John Titor. And get this, he also alleged that Maury Haber, also referred to as John Rick Haber, was a computer scientist, so he might have known IBM's secret. So naturally, I immediately emailed Larry Haber and asked him all about it. This was his response. It's also been said that he is actually the lawyer representing Titor's family or estate in the present time. Naturally, I asked him if that was true, and if he could give me more details. Now, call me stubborn, but I followed up again to ask if John Titor was real. Then, just 2 years ago, artist Joseph Matheny, creator of the alternate reality game Ong's Hat, that's right, alternate realities, claimed that he worked as a consultant for the creators of John Titor. Created as a literary experiment by the people who were observing what he was doing with Ong's hat. See, at the time, Titor himself claimed to have started to see temporal divergences occur due to his military unit's time travel. Football games having different results, for example. It makes me think of a certain sports almanac. But could posting about a nuclear war have averted a nuclear war, at least in our timeline? Or could actually those allegations against him be hoaxers themselves, time travelers from the future who've come back to try to correct the timelines? But of course, Titor's explanations for why his predictions would not come true, and his insistence that he would rather not be believed, could all just be clever reverse psychology by the ultimate internet prankster. But personally, I don't know about you, but I want to believe that a 1975 antique computer, a portable computer weighing 23 kilograms, one day really does save the world. I guess only time will tell. Well, we'll be back sooner or later with another retro recipe. Until then, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe and join below. And cheerio.